I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Joan, you have the roll recorded. Okay, and the main two purposes of tonight's meeting is to interview and select a candidate for the Easton Public Library Board, and then to select a new school director replacing the position of Mr. Arntz from Region 1. So with that, we actually have asked that all three candidates be up here, and I think to begin off, we're going to have Mr. Riley explain a little bit about the role and the time and everything that's necessary for the library board. Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know how much you know about the library board or the library, but the library's over 100 years old. It's had an agreement with the school district for over 100 years. The board consists of 6 members from the public, one representative from the school board, which is myself. You have the director of the library, and you have the business manager usually meet at the board meetings. The meetings are the second Tuesday of the month, usually at 3 p.m. They last between an hour and a half. There are no meetings in July or August. We take care of all our business for those 2 months in June. There's committees such as Buildings and Grounds, Finance, and Policy. And it's a really nice bunch of people. Does anyone have any questions at this time about the board itself? Thank you. Mr. President?
I think we'd like to go right down the row here on my left, your right, and tell us why you're interested and what you know about the library and why you'd like to join the library.
I'm Ellen Heath, and I'm interested because after I took an early retirement as a career school librarian, I took the job as children's librarian at the Easton Public Library, at the main library, and worked there for 3 years and have just recently retired again. And I live on College Hill. I was used to working in suburban communities, and I fell in love with our city library. It's an amazing place where all of the people from all of the different parts of our community come together. I think it's very important to downtown. And I have tremendous respect for Jennifer Stocker, the director, that she would hire someone older than her mother and work well with that person. Her integrity is incredible. I've worked in other libraries where you were told what your budget was and then suddenly it wasn't. And in the 3 years I worked for Jennifer, what she said was what she did, and I had tremendous trust in her. And I think that she takes a difficult situation. She's working with people from the suburbs and people from downtown, and she makes that library work, and she does it very gracefully. And I would like to support her, and I would like to contribute beyond the time when I was a paid employee.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Michelle Volcano Hall, and I'm an educator. And I've been an educator for about 5 or 6 years now. I've been a patron of the public library my entire life. I remember getting my first library card, feeling how important that was. And I'm in there quite frequently. I read all the time, and I am an advocate for literacy in any aspect, whether it's in our educational system or it is just younger students being a part of something and feeling that they can go somewhere where they have an internet connection and a safe atmosphere where they feel that they can maybe meet a tutor. I'm very passionate about the city of Easton and the community of Easton. I wanted to be a member of the Easton Area Public Library Board because I feel that I can give back something to not only the community but to the people that serve the library as well, especially in the capacity that the library works with so many different types of organizations and people on a daily basis, and that's something that's very important to me to get involved in.
Thank you. Process of elimination. Very good at that.
Hello, I'm Linda Lipko. I'm just going to piggyback what both of them said. The importance of libraries can never be undervalued. Recently, I'm affiliated a lot with the Palmer Library. Recently, I went to drop off some books, and I saw an elderly couple who said, "Oh, the library's closed today." Following them was a family with 3 children, and the mother said, "Oh, the library's closed today," which leads to why I want to be a part of this. It's so important. The generation, I work at Lehigh University in publications. I've been the advisor for the newspaper and the yearbook for 28 years. I've seen technology change. And people say, oh, well, we're not going to use the printed material anymore. And when I go to the library, I say, no, I think that's very, very wrong. Not only does it serve the fact that you can collect a book and read it and save money and not have to buy it, but it serves children's programs, adult programs. It is a place where people go not only to learn, but to be together. Sometimes in a family unit, which is what I experienced that Saturday. I believe in publications. I like working on publications. I've served on various boards in Bethlehem, primarily for the Shelter for the Homeless. Did that for about 15 years. My role there was personnel primarily. I hold an accounting degree, so I did some of their financial, payroll, and accounts payable. And again, just what they're saying, we cannot undervalue the role of libraries and what they do. I'm a transplant to Easton, so that when I moved here about 7 years ago, naturally sought a library, and it was the Palmer Library. And I became involved with learning about the staff and what they do, getting to know them. And I think Stephanie Sapinski does a phenomenal job, extra hours that she works. And I see that as a staff that's very, very dedicated. I met with Jennifer when I wanted to apply. She gave me graciously an hour of her time so that I wanted to know, how is this funded? And I was surprised and delighted that the school board plays a pivotal role in that, more so than the state. State funding can be cut at any time. And the fact that the Easton School Board does the primary funding for this institution says that you're really dedicated to the community, and I like that. So I think I could be an asset. I'm looking to retire in a few years, and I'm looking to spend more time in an atmosphere of publications and libraries.
I'm going to ask just a couple general questions here. This is yes or no type stuff, okay? More from a legal point of view. Have any of the 3 of you ever been convicted of a crime? Okay. That applies, and that was the biggest one. So, just to make sure, everything else is more related to the school board positions. So, with that, other questions? Bob?
I'd like to know, first of all, I compliment you all on applying, and obviously we're very lucky to have 3 such qualified candidates. But do any of your current work schedules preclude you from the regular attendance of the meetings as described by Mr. Riley?
Other questions?
Yes, Mr. President. Of the 3 committees I mentioned, the Buildings and Grounds, Finance, and Personnel, going from the opposite direction, so we have a different order. What committee do you think you could best benefit, and how and why?
I would like to be involved in the personnel, if you have a personnel committee. I met with Jennifer, and I was trying to discern how raises were decided, what were the processes for hiring, and learned that she does primarily the hiring, the firing. I think that's a lot to ask of one person. So I would like very much to be involved in personnel. I do that at Lehigh. I supervise approximately 100 students with the yearbook and the newspaper. And so I know how difficult it is to work with people and their needs. So I think I bring a lot of assets. I would bring a lot of assets to the personnel committee. I would want to get to know the Southside employees. I've never been there. So So I would very much like to meet all of the employees of the library and talk to them and see what roles they play and how important this is in their life. That's what I think I can contribute.
Thank you.
Mr. Riley, could I ask you to repeat the question you mentioned?
Yes. Of the three committees I mentioned, Buildings and Ground, Finance, and Personnel, which one do you think you would want to be involved with, and what would you bring to that committee? How would you benefit it?
I feel I'd probably be the best asset to the finance committee. I have a background in business administration. I'm very proficient in accounting. I have done budgets before. I have looked over numbers to see where things fit in. And please don't get me wrong. I don't have an enormous amount of experience, but I do feel like at the library, with it being a smaller entity than something like the school district, I would be beneficial in that aspect of the financial.
Thank you.
I think I would also be most interested in finance. It's a complicated formula, the way the library is funded, and I would like the opportunity to be an advocate as well on the state level for financing the library, working through the Friends. I know that money comes from bequests. There's so many different ways that that library deals with funding. I've obviously managed budgets in libraries, in departments of libraries, so I understand that piece of it. But I think that if I truly were able to see that full funding picture, I might be able to be a better advocate outside of the city of Easton, or outside of the school board's contribution.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Mr. President?
Anybody else with any questions? I must ask, at this point, I'm going to ask the public. Need to turn that on, sorry. Need to ask the public. There are two items on the agenda, number 3 and number 4, Region 1 term amendment and the library board interviews. I'm not looking that anybody's here to ask any questions of the candidates. That's not the purpose. That's the board's job. But if there's any comments or questions by the public on the process, now would be the time to stand and speak and say your piece. Yes, you have to come to the podium and sign in.
My name is Sandra Volcano, and give me my address, 531 Philadelphia Road, Easton, Pennsylvania. My question is, certain boards, are you looking for any kind of diversity as to how many members are from one area, like Palmer Township, Easton, or doesn't it matter? Are you looking for diversity on the board, and do you have that currently for this particular board?
We're only taking comments, so it's just,
Well, okay.
that makes everybody think.
That would be
and
my concern.
Okay.
Do you have diversity on this board as far as, I don't know if you're mandated to have diversity by the bylaws of the library, if there are bylaws, or doesn't it matter that there's diversity from so many members from the suburb, so many members from the city? That would be my opinion. That I think it would be nice if that were the case, or if that was able to be the case. Sometimes you don't get applicants from areas that you wish to have, not wish to have, but you may not be able to get. You don't get the applicants to say, your bylaw said you need 2 from each section. Maybe that doesn't even say that, but I'm just wondering if you are looking as a board for diversity, and is that currently in place?
Thank you.
That's my comment.
Of course. Mr. Anderson?
Comment, if I may. If I were in the process of selecting a member of the board in today's changing times, I would think most carefully about that board member's ability to raise funds, bring in grants, and continued mission or enhance the mission through other outside resources, which is becoming increasingly important today and increasingly important in the future direction. So the ability to grow the library system through other resources other than library experience per se, I think I would add to my list of things I'd be looking for.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none. The first item I asked was number 3 on the list, and that is the approval to set up Region Seat 1 as going to be a 4-year term beginning December 2013. By authorizing this, you're authorizing the officers and the administration to take the appropriate actions to change that. Meaning, when we get down to the school director positions, we will be telling them that this is the appointment. It expires in 2013 on December, and as of in 2013, when they run for the position, it will be a 4-year term, therefore staggering the terms. Any questions? If not, can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion and second. Are there any other comments? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? On the library board, I will entertain motions. We have 3 viable candidates in front of us, and so I will entertain a motion. No motion. Dr. Moskaitis.
I move that we elect Ellen Heath to the open position.
We have a motion. Do we have any seconds?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. At this point, thank you. Appreciate the time you've taken and everything, and congratulations. Carol, if you may. Yes.
When I went through this in August, this was, the secretary would come down, the elevator would open, and you wait and move up.
Hi, Jody. We have a special seat up here,
Special seat?
a special seat
Oh,
in the middle of the room.
Okay. Good evening.
Evening. We have a series of questions this evening, and I'll start it off, and Bill will then follow. We're going to alternate back and forth. We are going to try, I know this was scheduled for 15 minutes. I suspect it's going to be more like half an hour. We're going to ask that we stay focused on the questions and everything,
Okay.
and we'll try to move through.
Okay.
And a couple of these questions are legal questions. So, starting with, have you ever been convicted of a crime?
No.
Are you a member of any other boards?
No.
Do you hold any public office?
I am the majority inspector for voting, which doesn't conflict.
Okay. Are you employed by the federal government?
No.
And this one is not legal, so now we're starting to get into the questions.
Okay.
Do you have any relatives working in the Easton Area School District, and if so, in what capacity?
Yes, I do.
I have a husband who is in the teachers union. My mother was in the guidance office as a secretary. She is now retired. And my brother-in-law is a custodian.
At this point, this becomes an interesting one for you. I can't even ask a part of it. The first one was going to be, why did you not run in the previous election? Forget that. What motivates you to become a board member? And will you be interested in running for the position when this appointment ends? To clarify that, we just took a vote. This will become a 4-year term starting in December of 2013.
Okay. All right. Why I wanted to become a school board member. As you know, I was on the board previously. And the reason that I wanted to become a school board member at that time was because I felt it was important to be involved in the educational process for my children. I felt that I wanted to make sure that they had a safe environment to go to school in. And I felt it was important to make sure we could do all of that without killing the taxpayers.
Bill?
Provide us with some of your background that you believe will be helpful while serving on the board. Talk about your community involvement, youth involvement, etc. What experience in the community do you have that would lend you to knowing what the community would expect out of public education?
Okay, this is multiple parts, so
Yes, it is.
can you repeat the,
Provide us with some of your background that you believe would be helpful while serving on the board.
okay? You can go through them and I'll just,
Talk about your community involvement, youth involvement. Okay?
okay?
What experience in the community do you have that would lend you to knowing what the community would expect out of public education?
Okay. First of all, my experience. I think from being on the board in the past 4 years has given me a lot of experience to understand what challenges are being faced currently. And hopefully, by learning some of those things that I did, being on 4 years, could help in a capacity to still be on, or to continue being on, and to hopefully, again, run in the future. I learned a lot about what the community expects. I think one of the things that the board faces right now is, or I should say, what I think, one of the challenges I think the board faces is having the community understand what the board's responsibility is. I think the experience of legal issues, the educational process, what's needed, facilities, understanding the budget, understanding where changes can be made to hopefully continue to keep the education that we have and the programs that we have and the teachers that we have, being able to keep the staff that we have, and looking at how the district needs to operate differently on the business part of it. As far as community youth involvement, a long time ago I used to coach. I don't have the opportunity as much as other people to coach or do some of those things because I was working full-time. I was going to school. I was on school board. As you know, my husband doesn't have a 9-to-5 job. He teaches, he coaches, and I think my involvement, I am more involved in some of the things that he's involved in. We do a lot more with the baseball team. Right now, we're both getting involved in the Miracle League for Northampton County. As far as what the community is expecting, I've sat on, when we were doing the superintendent search, what the community was expecting from the superintendent. And by that, I mean what they wanted in the education for the community. And that was a big eye-opener to see what it was they were expecting, what they wanted, how they felt about how the district already was operating, and some of the expectations of of what needed to be changed. I'm not sure if that answered all your questions, or if anybody has any other follow-ups to that.
I'm also multi-part. You're going to find a lot of this tonight.
Okay.
What kind of experience have you had with working with budgets? Do you have any recommendations to alleviate our current financial crisis? And recently, as you know, this all leads up to it, we've had to make some very difficult decisions. How do you handle making difficult decisions? What's your process?
Okay. Well, again, being on the board for 4 years, I think I've had the experience of going through 4 years of budgeting. As far as my career, there were minor aspects to it of budgeting. I needed to make sure that certain projects I was handling didn't go over the budget. I don't hold a job that I work on $1 million budgets. The experience that I have is from what I had on the board. To alleviate the current, I think there are several things. Again, it's how the district operates the business aspect of it. And that means understanding where we can cut cost, whether it be energy, like Mr. Pittibone brought up, which we had talked about when I was on the board, whether it be I'll give you an example. When we talked about this before, I had actually talked to several different custodial people. And one of the things they brought up was toilet paper and paper towels in the bathrooms. Doesn't sound like a lot. But when you go to the cheaper aspect of the toilet paper and the paper towels, they were changing them instead of 2 times, or instead of every 2 days, they were changing them at least once a day. Why? Where's the savings? So I think looking at things like that is very important. You look at it and say, okay, well, that's one thing, but you got 7 elementary schools, you have your middle school complex, and your high school. It's a lot of bathrooms. I think also it's important to look at how the decisions that Harrisburg is making and federal. So state and federal cuts, I think that's something that's the district needs to really look at and be an advocate in that aspect. I also think one of the things we've always talked about is the charter schools. Is it possible for us to do something? Instead of allowing and giving the money somewhere else, is that something that we could take on? And how do I handle making difficult decisions? Well, putting my name in there tonight was a difficult decision. I think you have to look at things objectively. You have to take the personal aspect out of it. You have to look at who's involved, who it's going to affect, and what the cost is going to be, and do what you can from there.
Thank you.
This one's shorter. What is your vision for education, and how does it support the economy and quality of life in this community?
Okay, my vision of education.
And how does it support the economy and quality of life in this community?
All right, how does it support the what? I'm sorry.
The economy,
The economy.
quality of life in this community.
Whew. My vision of education. Okay, we talk about quality education for our students. And I think one of the important things to look at is not of our students, I think we need to look at our students more individually and making sure that we're meeting all of their needs. And a lot of that has to do with being able to look at your data, see where you need to make changes. And understanding that there are different needs for those students and how you're addressing it. And the problem comes about is as far as your budget, how you're going to do that. I think the concern that you have is when you start cutting the teachers, it's making sure you take a look at the process of how you're going to take that teacher who already has their plate full and seeing what changes you can make in the classroom to be able to cover all those needs. Because I think when you start to cut the teachers and you start cutting the programs, you're going to have kids who are less engaged. I think you're giving them less opportunity, which ultimately I think affects your community in the end. How does it support the economy and the quality of life? I think that says it right there. It's in the end, it's going to affect your community. It's a difficult time right now. I think we've actually been fortunate that we haven't had to cut as many teachers and programs as some of the area schools around us. I don't want to see us get to that point, though, because I think you're going to decimate your schools. Does that answer your question?
Okay. Please state the top 3 objectives that you would like to see accomplished during your term of office if appointed to the board.
My top 3 objectives?
Top 3.
First one, I think the relationship between the board and the employees. I think it's something that has lapsed over time. I think it's something that's important to be able to work as a group, work collaboratively, work cohesively. I think that's something right now that unfortunately is looked at that it's a tug of war. Who's going to win the battle? I don't know if that's necessarily the case, or I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it's just the perception. Unfortunately, I think people look at it and say, well, the teachers union and the board, and it's not so. But I think rebuilding some of those relationships are important, and working together. That would be one of my objectives. The other objective would be definitely making our voice more apparent in Harrisburg, to make them more aware that we need some of the funding. And my third objective would still be the same as it was before, making sure that our students have a good education and in a safe environment.
Okay, thank you.
What do you believe are the most pressing items the district is facing at this time?
The budget. The budget and balancing how you're going to provide the programs, continually making cuts. And that's a concern I have with being able to continue to provide that education and give our kids the options.
Okay. This one you're familiar with. Can you dedicate the time and energy required to be on the school board? That's including attending the monthly committee meetings, regular board meetings, special board meetings, events, executive sessions, and devoting the preparation time involved in reviewing the materials made available prior to the meetings, etc.
Yes, I think it's evident since I still come to the board meetings that I would definitely put the time in.
Okay. That was an easy. Thank you. Like that?
You touched on this briefly.
Okay?
What is your vision or plan for Eastern Area School District to compete with cyber or charter schools? In what ways would you vision or plan help this district?
I have to be honest, as far as charter schools go, I'm not as familiar with everything that goes into it. I know that we had talked about it previously. I know that we were spending or sending, I think it was anywhere between $600,000 and $25,000 or almost up to $1 million to the charter school to reimburse them. The concern I would have with that is what money we would have to put out, what resources we would need, and if we would be able to have those resources to be able to fund taking on that responsibility ourselves. So I can't say that I actually have a plan for it. I think that would be something that, I think as a board, if that's a decision that you would make, that would be a collective decision. Unfortunately, I don't think that was a priority for our previous board.
And the last one, you're doing pretty good.
Am I keeping you on time?
We're going to be on time. Well, it depends on your response to this.
Uh-oh.
What do you view as the top educational concern facing Pennsylvania school systems today? And what is your vision to address this concern and to address a positive outcome?
So it's viewing the top educational issues in Pennsylvania. Again, it comes down to funding for the students. Where are you getting the funding to make sure that they're getting the proper education and the programs? Top. I think one of the things that I've always had an issue with is we've been regulated by the state and the federal government of how we need to run the school districts, PSSA, graduation, exams, those type of things. And the frustrating part is to take the funding away, but still mandate us to meet those requirements has stifled us. And regardless of whether you take the money locally or it comes from the state, it still comes from the taxpayers. So you have to make sure that what you're asking for from the state can still be afforded. I do think, though, that that would be the fight. They're either going to help us with the mandates, or we need to address how they can help us with the funding.
Okay. At this point, I'll ask if any other members had any follow-up questions or any comments. Seeing none, I will say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, Jerry. We have a special seat for you right up front. We have a few questions.
Okay.
And yes, our time is going more than what we initially allotted. We'll see.
As it always does.
So, I'm going to begin with a couple of legal questions first. And the first ends up, have you ever been convicted of a crime?
No,
Are you a member of any other boards?
no,
Do you hold any public office?
no,
Are you employed by the federal government?
yes. I'm by a state employee, I guess I should say. I am a teacher, so I am a public employee.
Okay, in New Jersey. Okay, well, that's okay.
Okay,
Okay, but if it's federal government, that's a different story.
Right.
Then I'll start with the questions. Do you have any relatives working in the Easton Area School District, and if so, in what capacity?
I have a husband who is a substitute paraprofessional and security. Has been a substitute for 5 years, part-time.
Okay, and along with that, what motivates you to become a board member, and why did you not run in the previous election?
I'm going to say timing. Timing had a lot to do with it. What motivates me is there's a lot of, with the economy and with the change that's going on federally with education support, there's got to be some creativity put into it.
Okay, and will you be interested in running for this position when this appointment ends? And to explain that further, the board took action this evening already that will make this a 4-year term starting in December of 2013. Therefore, at the beginning of the year in 2013, you'd have to run for the seat.
Yes. I am looking forward down the road into running.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll do this slowly because it's kind of multi-part.
Okay.
Provide us with some of your background that you believe will be helpful to us serving on the board. Talk about your community involvement, youth involvement, etc. What experience in the community do you have that would lend you to knowing what the community would expect out of public education?
Okay. Well, my background, I've been in education for 18 years. I am a teacher over in New Jersey. I have served on numerous committees. I was a professional development chairperson. I wrote professional development reports for the state that looked at all stakeholders' needs, not just teaching staff, but also the needs of the students and the community. I've coached many years with all levels, volunteer coach up to varsity level coaching over in Washington, New Jersey. I was the president of the PTA at Palmer for 1 year, so I was very involved with the PTA. My involvement is where I see there might be a need. People are asking for help. I'm always willing to help if I can assist them in any way. I'm not looking for, accolades, but I'm looking for the job to get done. Other than that, my youth involvement started way back, probably when I was in college, and I volunteered coaching then. I started my career teaching down in Hillside, New Jersey, teaching K through 4, and then I came back this way, and I've been at Warren Hills for 17 years.
Thank you.
Three-part question here. First is, what kind of experience have you had working with budgets?
Okay.
The second is, do you have any recommendations to alleviate our current financial crisis? And recently, we've had to make some very difficult decisions. How do you handle making the difficult decisions?
Okay. As a person in our district, I've served as content specialist, which is a step down from supervisor, where they, in my particular district, they eliminated supervisor positions. So I was in charge of the budget for our department, and we were asked to look at a budget in a different way, and that was to not look at what we have, but what we need. Not what we want, but what we need to make our programs work and to be successful. So when you look at a zero-based budget and you say, this is what I need in order for my class to take place and why I need it and how much I need of it, it's a different outlook than saying, hey, I have this much money, let's just spend it because we may use it. Okay, so it's a different way of looking at a budget. And really looking at how creative you can get with the resources that you have. I'm not a stranger to budget cuts. I'm not a stranger to, I was the lead negotiator for our contract the last time we negotiated. And, you know, there's a lot of sacrifices, and when you can justify those sacrifices and you look at the community, at the time in which we were negotiating our contract is when our beloved Mr. Christie decided to take a lot of our surplus, so we had to get creative. And, you know, we had to take some blows and take a pay freeze and justify that and to move forward. So I'm not a stranger to sacrifice. Recommendations. There's all kinds of recommendations. I can give you a list, but I can't in a way because I don't even know what your contract looks like. I don't even know what the contract looks like. You know, some of the things that we've done, I served on 3 negotiating boards for our district, and we looked at benefits, we looked at salaries, we looked at education, we looked at the whole spectrum of it, and where I see that there's a lot of hidden, where people don't understand in salary guides, you know, there's ways of alleviating some of that and slowing that process down.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm. What is your vision for education, and how does it support the economy and quality of life in this community?
My vision for education, well, I have a very passionate vision for education, or else I wouldn't be in education myself. I strongly believe that every child should have a quality education. You know, when my parents went to school, when I went to school, we did a lot of things of the basics. And I look at my own children, and I look at the kids that we teach with, and we're looking at a generation, I think the word we use is entitlement. And we look and say, we're not being as creative as we possibly can with the little tools that we can get by with. Yeah, technology is huge because that is their life, but, you know, are we utilizing it? They know more than we know with technology, and it's a scary thought that our students know more than we know with technology. So there's a lot of growth with technology, but I think we can be using our technology in a much more beneficial fashion. When you think about budget, you know, textbooks, all of that's gone technology. Everything's going to be technology-based, where textbooks are becoming null and void. I just had to order textbooks, and they're not even making new copyrighted editions of them anymore. So how do you turn around to your board and say, they're not making any new editions? We have to go technology. So things like that. As far as my vision, creativity is key. Flexibility is key. And as long as there's a passion there and you understand that every child can learn and will learn given the tools and the time. Time is a huge factor there. That that they can get the same quality education that I got in the 70s and the 80s and my parents got.
Please state the top 3 objectives that you would like to see accomplished during your term of office if appointed to this board.
Top 3 objectives. I think first and foremost is to help assist in alleviating some of the financial stress, not only on the district, but on our community. I haven't really looked at the report card lately, but I'm sure the economical disadvantage is growing. It's a growing population. So, when you don't have that revenue coming in, it's got to be compensated somewhere. So the financial burden, I see that as a big challenge. I see it as not only a challenge, but for me, I see it as an adventure. I see it as something that, to get to the meat of it and find out where it is that you can find some avenues to make sacrifices. Another objective is just quality education. Our kids are great, and the teaching staff is great. It's just being able to pull them together. I think it's in every district. The morale it's not just here in my hometown, it's also in every other district. And to bring all that together so you have a school community again, that's very important. Because once you get it from the top to the middle to the down, and the down being our children, and they're coming home and they're sharing stories of all the great things that are going on, you see that it's starting to be a place where people want to be again.
Okay, thank you.
What do you believe are the most pressing items the district is facing at this time?
It's finances. Finances are the number one concern right now.
Next one's a little longer, but it's asking, can you dedicate the time and energy required to be on the school board? This is including attending monthly committee meetings, regular school board meetings, special board meetings and events, executive sessions, and devoting the preparation time involved in reviewing the materials made available prior to the meetings.
When looking at my qualifications, first and foremost, I'm in education. I put forth 180%, and I believe in it. And I like to see things be successful in education. And if the time requirement is there, I've done many things that have required a lot of time and have never shunned away because of possible night meetings. I remember, again, negotiating our own contract. We're sitting with the board 5, 6, 7 times a month for 6, 7 hours at a clip, and never even a thought in my mind that, what do you mean I got to be there for another 6 hours? Time was not even an issue. It was my commitment to be there.
Okay, thank you.
What is your vision or plan for Easton Area School District to compete with cyber or charter schools? In what ways would your plan help this district?
That's a new, it's a new area, but it's up and coming. It's reality. I've taken online courses, and I see other districts, our neighboring districts like Bethlehem, where they're actually now going to start making it a requirement that every child take an online course. Do you lose the personal touch? In a way, I guess it's all in how you structure it. If you have an online course, but then you also have some instructional assistance for maybe kids that need that one-on-one or that small group, then, it can work. Cyber school can work, cyber classes can work, but again, we're dealing with middle school, we're dealing with high school, we're not dealing with college. Once you get to college and you're in some cyber classes, they're paying for their education. The students that we have in public education, if they don't want to, log on or take a class, then there's got to be a little bit of discipline there. I think as far as cyber coursework, I think you have to start it at the higher levels, where you have more disciplined kids with the honors and the AP classes, and work your way down. But it definitely has to be approached as a discipline, and it's almost where I think kids would have to qualify to be part of it. Because you can't send every child in there. Although, as I'm sure all of you know, our kids, I think, sometimes learn more from TV than what we want them to learn. So it's the technology piece of it. But I think that's something that we're going to be moving to in the very near future because of technology's turn.
Thank you.
And the final question.
Okay.
What do you view as the top educational concern facing Pennsylvania school systems today? And the second part of that is, what is your vision to address this concern and to address positive outcome?
Top educational concern. I think the top educational concern that I see that Pennsylvania is moving towards is because of the decrease in funding, we're looking at still trying to, if we use the terminology, produce a productive product, a productive citizen in our society. The concern is losing the kids in the cracks because of the economical strains that we're not getting from the state. And looking at kids that are just giving up. You know, I know we have the program at the academy that's really helping a lot of those kids stay in school. And I think if we keep going down the trend of not funding the programs that we need, we're going to have a lot more kids that we're going to really need to reel in and keep a hold of, or else we're going to start losing kids.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or follow-up questions by board members?
I just had one question, based on the letter, that you had experience with the Excellence by Design accreditation. Could you just
Touch a little bit on that? Warren Hills is in the process, just like Easton Area School District is, of filling out all of the paperwork and the process with the Excellence by Design protocol for middle states, and I was selected to be an internal coordinator in gathering all the information, looking at the data, looking at our objectives, what it is that we need to start writing our plans towards, and coming up with a plan and how we're going to implement those plans. So I am, to go back to the question of time commitment, it's a huge commitment, and but our district is very supportive of it, and it's a very interesting protocol because it makes you look at this, and this to see how they all tie in and how it's going to drive the district. And having all of that data and actually understanding the data is the most important. Is understanding it and knowing where to go with that data, and knowing what we can accomplish. If we have an economic strain, and we know we have an economic strain, there's only so much that we can do with that to move that forward. But yeah, if there's other areas that we can really work on, zone in on the areas that we have strength and move those forward, so then we can put all of our attention on some of the other things. So it is a process. This was our first year of collecting all the data. We're at the point now where we're just really looking at all of the data and sitting down and coming up with all of our objectives, and then starting our game plan with writing out the plans.
Any other questions?
Jerry, I don't know if I missed it or if you didn't say, what is it you teach?
I teach health and phys ed.
Okay. At the high school?
I teach at the middle school level. I taught at the high school for 3 years, and I taught at an elementary level for 1 year.
Any other questions? Hearing none? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jerry? You're going to be sticking around, right?
I am, I'm not going anywhere.
Okay, because you're welcome to stay in here after the interview. so.
Thank you.
Thank you. No problem. Hi, Rich. We have a seat right up front. Special over the trap door.
It's sturdy. I guess it's safe.
So, this evening, we have about 9 questions to ask. We're going to be alternating between myself and Mr. Ryder.
Okay.
And we're starting off with a few that are just the legal questions. And those are, have you ever been convicted of a crime?
No.
Okay. Are you a member of any other boards?
No.
Do you hold any public office?
No.
Okay. Are you employed by the federal government?
No.
Okay. And now we can begin. Do you have any relatives working in the Easton Area School District? And if so, in what capacity?
Okay, immediate, no. I do have my sister. She is a paraprofessional over at Palmer School. My niece, she works at Cheston. She's a teacher, but I believe this past year she may have been one of the the reading specialist, or I don't really know. I know she works at Cheston. And I have a nephew who is on the school district police force. And I believe that's it.
Okay, thank you. And, I mean, these next couple of questions are interesting. I will actually skip the one part. What motivates you to become a board member, and will you be interested in running for this position when this appointment ends? And I will explain one thing there. Earlier this evening, the board took action to move this to a 4-year term starting in December of 2013.
So there'll be 2 from Palmer, one on
They're
the
going to
off year.
stagger it, yes.
So you're finally getting it back. That's good. That
Yes.
should have been done many years ago.
So we took that action tonight, and this position would be the one to start that.
Okay.
So
So-
again, what motivates you to become a board
What
member?
motivates me? Well, as you're aware, I was on the board for 8 years, beginning in '99 to 2007. And in that time, a lot went on in the district. We went through several superintendents and so forth, and it was just a great learning experience. I chose to do that at that point in time over going for my master's, and I think I learned a lot more than maybe I would have going for a master's, but more than anything, I feel I was able to give my time and help kids and help the community and try to keep taxes down and so forth, though it didn't always work that way. But I felt like I was helping more. I like to help people, and I just felt, and the motivation to come back and apply again. As you're aware, a little over a year ago, I lost my son unexpectedly, and I was up for re-election. I was up for election at that time, and at that point in time, I just did nothing. And it's been a little over a year now, and I think I got my head on straight, and I'm ready to get back out and volunteer and help people and get involved again. I work for Crayola, and there's a huge volunteer program there, which I've always been a part of. So this is just another way I can, and since school board is a volunteer job that some people still don't understand, that why we would do that, but it's part of me.
And you would consider running again then in
Yes.
running to be elected? Okay, thank you.
Three-part, Rich, and I'll go slow.
3 parts.
Provide us with some of your background that you believe would be helpful while serving on the board. 2, talk about your community involvement, youth involvement, etc. And 3, what experience in the community do you have that would lend you to knowing what the community would expect out of public education?
Okay. What background would help? My background at Crayola has been, I've been at Crayola 38 years. Within the last year, I just was named the corporate historian and archivist. And prior to that, I don't know, 12 to 15 years worth, I was in customer service, both domestically and internationally, mostly internationally, so I dealt with a lot of folks internationally. So I think background-wise, my experience there at Crayola with working with all different types of individuals and so forth and communicating with them. And now as the corporate historian, I go out and I give Crayola history talks to various groups. So I am in contact with many different folks, mostly retirees at this point, as are the groups I've been speaking with. And so I do get to hear some of that, and some of them say, "Oh, aren't you the Rich Siegfried that was on school board?" So the school board comes up, and some say, "You're still on the school board." I said, "No, I'm not still on school board." So I still have many contacts within the community in that respect. And as a customer service manager, I had to worry about budgets. I had to do analysis of which company was cheaper to go with shipping containers over to China, back from, not so much back from China, but over to China, over to Australia, over to England, to our different customers. So I was in negotiations off and on. My current position as historian, my seat is down at the Crayola Experience in downtown Easton, and with some changes that have happened there, and my previous about 6 years experience before customer service was in procurement. So I was asked to put my procurement hat back on, and now I source materials for the crafts and so forth that are done at the Crayola factory. So every day I'm sourcing some material for the best cost or dealing with our procurement department. So I'm very much analyzing different types of costs and so forth. Community involvement, Relay for Life, participate in that every year since it was at Easton, and prior to that when it was at Allen High School, Moravian College, Slate Belt. Many years have been with the Relay for Life. The involvement with my church, always ready to step forward and help out where needed, or run an event or whatever. I haven't volunteered at Mayfair or Music Fest in the last few years, but that was always a staple in my summer itinerary of community involvement type things. And the experience, I did touch on, mainly I'm an analytical individual. I think some of the folks that were here on the board previous when they know I was maybe a little too anal in asking questions and the details involved with the budget and so forth. But I am very detailed. I ask a lot of questions, and I need to understand and know what I'm asked to vote on, that I understand it and know where we're headed.
Hey, another three-part question. What kind of experience have you had with working with budgets? Following up to that, do you have any recommendations to alleviate our current financial crisis? And lastly, recently we had to make some very difficult decisions. How do you handle making difficult decisions?
Well, budgets, I just touched on that. I don't know if I need to elaborate any more. They need to add up, they need to make sense, and I need to understand them, and I'm going to ask those questions. Budgets are made to be, it's a good target to go for. Yes, you can go over sometimes, but you really don't want to. And in the school boards, in the school district situation, if you go over, you're in big trouble somewhere else and you have to cut. So you really want to hold to those targets, and that's why you want to analyze that budget ahead of time and make sure that it's a good target that you're going for. The second part of my note.
Recommendations to alleviate.
Okay. Yeah, I would have a couple recommendations to share with you. You'd like to hear them?
Sure.
Okay. Since I am out on the street a little more during the workday than I was in my previous position, I just wonder, all of these school district vans, pickup trucks, whatever kind of vehicle I see, mostly maintenance, I'll tie it to the maintenance department, I would believe. Why is it when you're at Greenwood Avenue, anywhere from 11:15 to 11:45, that there's a solid parade of school district trucks going down Northampton Street to the maintenance facility? And the same thing at 3 o'clock, 2:30, sometime there in the afternoon. I know we tried to address that when I was on the board, but it seems like everybody reports to the maintenance facility. Everybody goes to their job at the school, wherever building they're working in, goes back for lunch, goes back out, goes back for the end of the day. I think if there's a job going to be done at, for instance, Forks Elementary School, that it's going to take 3 days and it's going to take employee ABC, they get assigned there for those 3 days and they don't go to the maintenance building, and they can, I don't recall what kind of time clock system we have or whatever, what you have in the district, but I think you can save some gas, and I know you can save some people time, work time, people on the job more often, or longer period of time instead of traveling the roads. It's not a 5-minute drive anymore between any one of our buildings and the maintenance garage, maintenance department. That's one of them that just comes to mind right away. Other recommendations, I don't know what the current contract is, so I really don't want to. I'm sure I would have some recommendations if I knew what the contract was, and say teach more classes, or not. It's not always popular. My recommendations aren't always going to be popular, and they may come out, and when I get more information, then maybe I would retract and go the other way. But first thing would be, I think it was shortly after I was off the board back in early 2008, maybe sometime in that time frame, there were some classes added at the high school that one was jewelry making. That's stuck in my crawl ever since. I took jewelry making in college. That's one of the fine arts you always get to take. to fill up that fine art requirement. Do we really need that at the high school level? And did we, one of my other suggestions at the time, and I know Brian and didn't like it, Brian Gallmer, but I suggested that we look at, as a school district looks at some sort of other combination with the VOTEC instead of having 4-hour classes. Is there some way to get some 2-hour classes in there and not have, Brian explained to me, it's not a complete duplication of services, but could there be a program intertwined to that we weren't running almost the same type of program that the VOTEC is running? And I know the stigma with going to the VOTEC is a definite stigma, but it's also some teamwork and some collaboration with Ron Roth over there. Maybe you can do something there too. Again, just thoughts that need to really be looked into and dug into and determine if it's feasible or just not at all. Hard decisions. Hard decisions are exactly that. You've got to be totally objective. You've got to be honest. Honest is the biggest thing, I think, in a hard decision. If you're honest with someone, if you can sit down and look them in the eye and you can discuss what the situation is, I think a hard decision can be accepted by the person on the negative end. It can be accepted and feel better about it than just, we're cutting this, and you're on your way. You get a letter and in your mailbox or whatever. I think if there's a little bit more of a personal aspect into those hard decisions and why and so forth, some of them you can make it a little better than just getting that pink slip, so to speak, in the mail. And hard decisions, yes, I can deliver them. I've had to deliver them through my career at Crayola, so and I've received them, so I can participate in that.
Okay, thank you.
What is your vision for education, and how does it support the economy and quality of life in this community?
My vision, the quality. Well, I'm very proud of Easton. I'm an Easton graduate. I always want Easton to be in the front of everyone. I've always been proud of Easton. I've talked some young colleagues at Crayola to move into the Easton district because I think Easton offers more than any one of these neighboring districts in the area. I think our diversity is just a fabulous, fabulous thing that we can offer our students, because a student can learn and accept more than an adult can. And so I think our diversity helps any one of our students is just so lucky to be in the district and get exposed to the diversity that we have. And so my vision is, I want to, I just said, cut jewelry making. I want to offer the courses that make sense, that are economical. I don't want the classes that have 5 and 6 kids. I think at one point in time the policy was 10, a minimum of 10. My son, he was in the AP classes. Yes, some of his classes were small, and I don't know how small, because I wasn't concerned at that point in time from the economic aspect. I liked the classes he had. And we just did award a scholarship to a young man that my son took the first Japanese class that Easton offered, which was just absolutely fabulous. And I'm glad that we still have it, because that young man that got this scholarship also took the Japanese. And my son had Spanish and Latin all at the same time, and this young man had 2 of the 3. But it was really surprising to me, number one, when I went home one day and heard my son speaking Japanese on the phone. I don't know what he was saying, but he had one of the kids from the class, and they were doing their Japanese. And, I never, ever expected to hear that. I took Latin. You couldn't carry a conversation with Latin. So, but those are the type of classes that, you look at some of these other school districts and they're cutting German or they're cutting this. I don't know if those are the types of, that adds to the quality of the overall what we're offering. And we've got to pick the right courses to have that are the most economical, to keep that quality up there, to afford all of our students the very best chance of the very best education. And they do get the very best education at Easton if they exert a little bit of their own energy and don't just sit back in high school.
This one's a little bit easier. Please state the top 3 objectives that you would like to see accomplished during your term of office, if appointed to this board.
I'm sorry, the first piece,
The top 3 objectives.
top 3, okay. Well, I'd like not to have to visit the teacher's contract every year and worry about having the turmoil in the district, both from a community, a parent, a student, a teacher, an employee of anything. We've got to get past that. We've got to get something going here that we don't have to do this on an annual basis. Number 2, I want the very best classes for the students and the very best instructors, and so I think it's. I know curriculum review is not easy; it's very time consuming, and I know we did at one point have a schedule. I'm sure we're still following it, but maybe we need to, as we review the curriculums, maybe we need to look at maybe we need to review what we're reviewing on the curriculum to see for sure what it is. And I know you were just challenged with a certain book in an AP English class, and I'm glad to see that the outcome was what it was. But that's the thing, we've got to, as a board and as a school district, we've got to know what we're teaching, what we have, and that we can stand up and we can defend it and go on our way and not spend a whole lot of time. But maybe these curriculum reviews can be a little more in-depth or whatever, and you could have even put this book issue to bed even quicker than what it was. So, number 3. I don't want the tax increases, and that's a tough one to say, but there's ways around some things, and I know, Dr. Muscovich, you wanted 0%, thank you. I would say that too, but with everything that we were faced, it's a tough one, and we were just discussing downstairs with the other candidates. Walmart is just in Lower Nazareth. It's just out of Palmer Township. Bethlehem Township has everything else, all the other stores. Easton School District just isn't fortunate enough to have that type of taxing businesses to come into us. And And I was a proponent when it was that the Northern Palmer Township get the racetrack because we needed the revenue. I didn't want it to ever go into more housing, because if that ever went into more housing, we're sunk. And so right now, it looks like it's going to stay totally industrial, so it's a plus for the district and for the area, but we've got to in those top three, we've got to really look at the money and see what we can do with what we've got, and to try to hold back. And easier said than done. And I'm sitting here on this side of the table without looking at any of the, I haven't seen any of the, I know what it was like when I was on the board, so.
Okay, thank you.
What do you believe are the most pressing items the district is facing at this time?
Gee, I can go back. Okay, number one is the budget and the money, and our employees, the district's employees. They just can't endure this year after year of not knowing, are they going to have a job or they're not going to have a job, but it all comes back to the money issue. So unfortunately, the pressing issue comes back to money, and then finding ways to try to, I don't know, smooth it so that it's not a constant interruption with everything every year. I don't know what more I can say there, Bill.
Okay, the next one you're going to be familiar with as well. Can you dedicate the time and energy required to be on the school board, including attending monthly committee meetings, regular board meetings, special board meetings and events, executive sessions, and devoting preparation time involved in reviewing the materials made available prior to the meetings?
Well, as I'm assuming you folks got my request to be put on here. But being the board president for 4 of the 8 years, vice president for 2, I was at all those meetings. And at that point in time, I still had a couple boys in college, and had some things to run there with them and so forth, and tend to that. Now my wife and I are home alone, and I think I definitely have the time. I know I do, because that was one of the reasons I go home at night and I'm bored to death. I sit in front of a TV that is garbage. Most of the time, I don't even do that anymore. I go read a book or work on my Sudoku puzzles because I'm bored to death. So I really need to find something to do, and if I'm not the choice tonight, I'm going to be looking for something else to do. So, because as I said, I think I got my head on straight now after the past year, and I'm ready to move forward and get moving and get doing something again. So,
okay, thank you.
I can do it.
What is your vision or plan for Easton Area School District to compete with cyber or charter schools? In what ways would your plan help the district?
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because in today's paper, Nazareth announced that they are doing a cyber school. And back when we started, and I say we, the academy across the creek here, I worked on that. I helped work with the Hallmark lawyers, pass the paperwork back and forth between our solicitor and their solicitors and so forth, and help get that going, because that particular year, if my memory serves me correctly, I think we saved about $430,000 by opening the academy across the street with, I think we started out with about 15 teachers or aides or employees over there, and we saved all this money because we were not paying for the special services of the IU or some of the other facilities that we were sending kids to, because, as you're all aware, we have to still educate a child, whether they're in our regular classrooms or if they've been put to remediation of some sort. So I think that's a big success over across the creek. At least I assume it is at this point. I really wasn't around much after it got started. But I think that would be fantastic if we could start the same thing with the cyber and get that money and not give that Nazareth's number was $8,200, I think, in the paper today, but give that money to the charter school and not know for sure. And I know at the time when the Lehigh Valley Arts Charter School opened up, and we had some students go there, and after half a semester or something, we had those students come back and others go, and you were at the high school, Bill, some came and went, and I talked to parents about that you don't have the same quality of the other classes there that you do at Easton. And so maybe for some kids that those charter schools and the cyber charter schools are really good, but if they are, we can get it on there too, and they've been in business now long enough that we can model after some of them, and we could do it here and keep those same students within the district, or get others. I know that was the thing with Japanese, that we did have some from another school. I don't remember what other school was in that classroom, but and that was I guess you can say a little bit of a moneymaker, but because they paid for those services of that classroom teacher. But yeah, that's a great idea.
And the last question. What do you view as the top educational concern facing Pennsylvania school systems today? And the second part of that is, what is your vision to address this concern to achieve positive outcomes?
Well, I think the top educational issue is with the state is they keep cutting the money. When I came on the board, we got roughly, I'm going to say 28%. I don't know what Easton's share might be down to now of the budget, but I know everyone's is considerably less. And in order to solve that, that's a tough one, because you got to get in some representatives and some congressmen's pockets so that they listen to you and they start speaking for you instead of for big business and for the lobbyists. And we have PSBA as a lobbyist for us, but they just aren't doing the job. I think every one of the school districts in Pennsylvania needs to get their local guy and really haul them in and try to get them working with us and try to put some pressure coming from the bottom and pushing up and try to get some money released back to the school districts where it should be going. That's a tough one, and it's one that no single school district is going to do together. And I used to be the PSBA representative and the delegate, and used to go to all their training sessions. So don't know what they're really doing on that front today. I'm sure they're still working that direction, but they're just not getting it done for us. So I think the individual school districts, I know, Mr. Faino, you and I used to talk back and forth as presidents of neighboring school districts when we were on the board, when I was on the board, and I think more of that has to happen, and I think we need to maybe regionalize or something and try to do more on our own, and maybe get PSBA to, I don't know, it's tough. The players change, we had Rich Gracella, but, you know, of course, the representative, every 2 years, you get a chance of getting somebody else, so it's, and you always get those freshman congressmen and that don't carry much weight, so it's a tough one, but we've got to get the state to, you know, there was a question online the other day, would you approve of a higher sales tax and eliminate school taxes? And that's one way to look at it. Would it work? Who knows? But you know, I think that's being kicked around in Harrisburg a little bit right now. But you know, there again, you got to do a lot of number crunching and see how that would work, and see if you really need to support that, or if you need to push back against that and go a different direction. But a lot of number crunching, a lot of projections, and a lot of guesstimates in there too.
Well, thank you. That ends the formal questions. Do any board members have any follow-up questions?
Mr. President, I have one.
Please.
Mr. Siegfried, I see that you ran on, and I've heard that you ran 2 terms ending in '07. Did
Yes.
you seek re-election after '07, or did you just decide to step down for a little bit?
No, I did seek re-election. I was defeated. And I think newspaper reporter asked me this, so I'll share it with you. It's probably going to hit the paper anyway. I think he asked me the main reason why I thought I might have been defeated. And at that point in time, there was this teacher's contract that you're still dealing with was being negotiated. And I was asked by the union if I would promise to support it if they promised to support me. And I can't promise to support something that I hadn't seen, nor could I promise to support something that I didn't know how it would affect the district. So at that point in time, I said I couldn't make any promises, and I'm just assuming that was one of the big reasons. I don't know. The 2 other years that I was elected, I was the top vote getter both times, and then I went to 5th, I believe, out of 5 or 6, I forget which, but I just kind of always assumed that I was told the teachers wouldn't support me, so.
Any other questions?
I'd just like to say this, that Mr. Siegfried said he was a very tough president. Some of the things he said were absolutely correct. He did know the state code rather well, and he followed it. And I think he would make a good school board member again, because after serving 8 years, he was a very, and very precise in what he did, and he did a lot of research on his own. So taking that into consideration, I would say that's, to me, stands up for a chance to be reappointed.
No, he's supposed to be asking a question.
I'm just saying that what he said, I'm backing up what he said, that it was true. He researched everything, he made sure he was right, and I don't know how he did it, working, honestly, but he did what he said, and I just want to say that.
Okay. Any other questions though for Rich? Bob?
I have a comment for Mr. Siegfried and a question. In 61 years, I've heard my name pronounced many, many different ways.
And I said it differently, didn't I?
I congratulate you that you found a new way.
I'm sorry.
You mentioned that you really are analytical and that you really followed budgets. When you were the president and when you served on the board, did you receive monthly line item or by groupings budget updates that would prevent what happened to us last year, which was a $3.3 million overrun?
No. We didn't have by line item, no. And at the finance committee meetings, we didn't really have anything that was, as you suggest. We followed what we could and
Hope for the best, because I was on the finance.
yeah,
committee.
it was, we were pretty critical at those finance committee meetings, but again, we didn't have line for line or,
It's hard to be critical and analytical without data. Would you agree with that?
I did a lot of sitting with the business manager.
We're very close now. Mr. Simonetta, I think, has done a really nice job, but that's
It's-
something that
it sounds
it's been a
from-
really long journey, shall we say.
That was a very weak point in the district. How many business managers did we have? 1, 2, 3, I think, maybe.
Thank
So
you.
it was,
Any other questions? Rich, thank you.
okay, thank you. I get to stay, correct?
Yes. Welcome, Baron. Thank you. Chair right in the middle there. So, this evening we have a few questions to ask.
Okay.
And we're going to be alternating between myself and Mr. Ryder. And I'll be starting with first of a few legal type of questions.
Okay.
Okay. And the first is, have you ever been convicted of a crime?
I have not.
Are you a member of any other boards?
No, I am not.
Do you hold any public office?
No, I do not.
Okay. Or are you employed by the federal government?
No, I am not.
Okay, good. Have to go through the routine here. And everybody in the audience is getting used to this by now. Now we'll start with the first. And it's a multi-part type of question. The first part is, do you have any relatives working in the Easton Area School District? And if so, in what capacity?
I do not have any relatives in the district.
Okay. And then it's, what motivates you to become a board member at this point? And why did you not run in the previous election?
In the previous election, I was coming to an end of my undergraduate career, and the timing just did not seem to be right for me. It was always my intention to run for this seat, but like I said, due to educational endeavors, it just didn't work out for me at that time. I'm motivated to run for this position because I feel like I'm in a good position in my own life to represent the Easton Area School District.
Okay. And why did you not, will you be interested in running for this position when this appointment ends? And just to explain that, earlier this evening, the board took the vote on that we will be changing this to become a 4-year term starting in December of 2013. So the appointment's good from now until then, but at that point, it will become a 4-year position.
At this time, I would be interested in running for it, should I be put to this appointment.
Okay, thank you.
3-part question.
Okay.
I'll go slow. Provide us with some of your background that you believe will be helpful while serving on the board. That's one. Number 2, talk about your community involvement, youth involvement, etc.
Mm-hmm.
With me so far?
Gotcha.
Okay there, kid?
I'm cool. I'm with
I
you.
know. And 3, what experience in the community do you have that would lend you to knowing what the community would expect out of public education?
Okay. Let's start with a background. I am a 2008 graduate of Easton Area High School, as well as a recent 2012 graduate of East Stroudsburg University, where I majored in public administration, government and politics, political science. Given that education and my background, I think that prepares me to meet the needs of this board. With fiscal difficulty and contract negotiation, I feel like I have the experience, given my education, to be a helpful part of that process. Also, in my background, I've been around the Easton area for gaining on 10 years, and I'm a part of this community. Like I said, I'm a graduate of Easton Area High School. I was very active in many different programs and clubs and what have you in the high school. I'm very involved with the students today. Even today, I still counsel and mentor students, deal with them directly. When it comes to the community, I'm very, very active in the community, and I think it shows from the events that I've been to, events that I've held, events that I've been invited to. I think that the community speaks for itself with those invitations. When it comes to youth, I think I can be a helpful part to this board because I'm fairly youthful myself. I am I'm young, but I've got some time under my belt. Not a lot, but I've got some. That I think would be good for this board. Like I said, I have not been here my whole life, but I've been here a good deal of time, and I've got experience in other places to see what things, how things are done differently in different places. In terms of public education, I think that in the long run, given financial difficulty, cuts from the state, cuts from the federal government, it all has to come back to getting our children educated. As a recent graduate, I graduated in 2008, I understand the need for strength in math and science and English and technology. I understand the need for very critical evaluations of those parts of education. And I think it's important, and I think I can be a good part of it, and I can be a big help to it.
This is also a three-part question. First is, what kind of experience have you had with working with budgets? The second, do you have any recommendations to alleviate our current financial crisis? And the third part, recently we had to make some very difficult decisions. How do you handle making difficult decisions?
Okay. Experience in budgets. I am employed by CVS Pharmacy, where I work between the front department and the pharmacy department in management positions. One of the most critical tasks that I have to do it at work is operate. I have to do a lot with a little bit, to put it plainly. I tried to figure out how to say that nicely, but that's what it really comes down to. Doing a lot with a little bit. And being in a business type of setting, that's very important. And you have to find that balance. You have to learn how to use what you have wisely. It's not easy putting out 3,000 prescriptions in a week with 200 man hours. That's not easy. But when you do your budgets correctly and you give good evaluations, it becomes doable. Recommendations for the budget. Well, the first thing is in-depth review. I think that's very important. Review of contracts, review of actual budgets, numbers and figures. It sounds so mediocre, I'd almost say, but it's a very important task. That can help save a lot when you look close to and examine things. That can be a big side, and that's one thing that I think would help with our budget woes. And difficult decisions. Well, I have to make difficult decisions on a daily basis. Like I said, I do work in a pharmacy where I have to be on the front line for people with health difficulties. That's a difficult decision in itself, trying to help people when they're sick and not always in their right minds and stay in the right moods. That in itself is very difficult. But it's doable. It's nothing that's not doable. And with the education and the training that I have, dealing with a budget that doesn't look very good is something that can be accomplished.
Okay, thank you.
Not a three-part.
Okay.
What is your vision for education? And how does it support the economy and quality of life in this community?
Okay. Well, like I said, I am a fairly young guy, but I've always been trained and taught that education is the key. There's really nothing you can do without a proper education. I mean, you can't really take out garbage without an education these days. Focusing on curriculum in the schools and adjusting to what companies are looking for these days is very important. Like I said, science and math are places where many districts, not just this one, have seen lack. And fixing that is very important to the quality of education. And being in an area where we are a thriving community, a community that is ever expanding and increasing. We've become quite a large city, a backpack city that some may call it, public planners call it. As industry starts to become interested in this area, we have to be prepared for that. And as the front line being the schools, we are responsible for the training to provide quality employees for these companies, public and private. So as we focus on curriculum, that would help the quality of education in this area.
Okay, the next one. Asking you to state the top 3 objectives that you would like to see accomplished during your term of office if you're appointed to this board.
Top 3 objectives. One would be let's go with this. One would be fiscal management. Increased fiscal responsibility would be one of the top objectives. The second objective would be, I'd have to go with curriculum again. Bettering the curriculum and preparing our students for lives after education. And the third thing would probably be to get some more community involvement with the schools, getting parents involved in the school board meetings and the school events and assemblies and what have you, field trips, whatever you call it. More community involvement would be very important. I think that would be the top 3.
Okay, thank you.
What do you believe are the most pressing items the district is facing at this time?
I don't even have to write that one down. This budget is pressing, very pressing. It's been big in the media. It's been big amongst the constituency. I'd have to say the budget is probably the biggest obstacle in front of the district at the moment.
The next is about yourself. Can you dedicate the time and energy required to be on the school board, including attending monthly committee meetings, regular board meetings, special board meetings, events, executive sessions, and also devoting the time for the preparation that's involved in reviewing the materials made available prior to the meeting?
Absolutely.
What is your vision or plan for Easton Area School District to compete with cyber or charter schools? In what ways would your plan help the district?
Well, I'd start to answer that question by saying there's nothing like a good public school education, sitting in a classroom with a teacher, to go over your coursework. To compete with cyber schools, I think it's about getting in touch with the parents. I don't think a decision like that can be made without a parent. I don't think a student can say, I'm going to, move on to internet learning without the advisement of their parent. As we educate parents more, keep them more involved, I think that will, move away from the reliance on the cyber schooling systems.
What do you view as the top educational concern facing Pennsylvania school systems today? And what is your vision to address this concern to achieve positive outcome?
Well, the most pressing issue, I have to say it again, is probably the state level budget cuts and the federal level budget cuts. To combat that, like I said, in my line of work, I'm very experienced in doing a lot with a little bit. It's as simple as moving things around to make it better for our students. There's a lot of things that can be moved around. There's a lot of moves we can make financially, with the setup of the school, what have you. There are things that we can do we can make do with what we have, as long as we do it responsibly.
Okay, thank you. That completes a list of actual questions. Now, if any board members have any other further follow-up questions or other questions.
Yeah, I just want to know, what was your major? Was it pharmaceutical or?
My major was political science with a concentration in public administration. However, I am employed in the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay, so you work out in front of the counter, not that in back of the counter.
Well, I'm behind the counter, yes.
Right, but you can't issue prescriptions.
Well, I'm not a pharmacist, but pharmacists cannot issue prescriptions in the state of Pennsylvania. Some states they can, but not in the state of Pennsylvania.
Other questions? Hearing none? Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Things went pretty good down there. Larry, we have a seat right up front for you.
Thank you.
This evening, we have a list of some prepared questions and everything, and I will be alternating back and forth with Mr. Ryder on asking these questions.
Sure.
And I will begin first with a few that are just legal, for legal basis. First is, have you ever been convicted of a crime?
No.
Are you a member of any boards?
No.
Do you hold any public office?
No.
And are you employed by the federal government?
No.
Okay. Based on that, we'll start with the regular questions. Thank you. Got to go through the standard legal ones,
Absolutely.
Do you have any relatives working in the Easton Area School District? And if so, in what capacity?
No, I don't.
Okay. And this is sort of three parts, but it's all related. First part is, what motivates you to become a board member? Why did you not run in the previous election? And then I'll hit the third after you answer those two.
And the first question was?
What motivates you to become a board member?
Okay. I worked for a Fortune 500 company for about 32 years and held many different positions out there for the company. And I just retired recently. Back in October 2011, and started getting involved in things in the community, started going hang out with some people and reading the newspaper a little bit more and understanding about the school board and looking at all the issues that are out there. And I'm a type of person who does not like to complain or about things. I like to make a change in it. So I talked to a couple of my friends and said I'd like to get on the school board, and we talked about it. And then I see Mr. Arntz resign. It was an opportunity for me to try to give something back to the community and to education.
Okay. And the last part of the question is, will you be interested in running for this position when this appointment ends?
Absolutely.
To that note, I will add this. Earlier this evening, the board took a vote where we've altered the timeline or the position on this so that it becomes a 4-year term starting in December of 2013.
Okay. Well, when I started looking into this about 3-4 months ago, I did make a commitment. I actually told people that I will be running in the next election. And when I started doing all the research and asking questions, I said to myself, if I don't make it this time, I will start preparing for the election year and try to come back and win the election. And already talking to certain people throughout there for support and stuff. This is something I want to do very strongly. So if I don't make it this time, you will see me back and I will win the election.
Okay, thank you.
I have a 3-part question.
Sure.
First part, provide us with some of your background that you believe will be helpful while serving on the board. First part. Second part is, talk about your community involvement, youth involvement, etc. And third part, what experience in the community do you have that would lend you to knowing what the community would expect out of public education?
Can you give me the first part first,
Sure can.
please?
Provide us with some background, some of your background that you believe will be helpful while serving on the board.
Okay, in my time with UGI Corporation, I have been through many different positions, union positions and management positions. I started out in an entry-level position in the union, and then I became an officer in the union, vice president. Then I became president of Local 1456, and at that time, then I also became president of what they call System Council of UGI Corporation. That's 3 locals, Harrisburg, Lancaster, and Lehigh. Negotiated many contracts between the union and the company, held many positions within the international. I did grievances, negotiations, and arbitrations. And then there was a position opening up into management, and with my relationship that I had with the company and stuff, I applied for the job. It was in customer service. It was outside my field. I got into frontline supervision. I had 12 to 15 people report to me. And then there was a situation of one of the areas of UGI where they had some problems within the group. They asked me to go over there and supervise that area. So within 2 years, I had that cleaned up and moving in the right direction. How to terminate 2 people, but it was the best thing to do for the company. From there, they wanted to, as you know, the utility company has PUC regulations and stuff like that. They wanted to break into a non-regulatory business called the heating and cooling. They asked me if I would run that. So from that point, I jumped over from, I was still in management, I jumped over to running, actually being a manager of the HVAC company, which consists of roughly 40 employees and $10 million contract. At that time, the HVAC business was still a regulatory part of the utility, and they wanted to carve it out. So we sat down with the union and negotiated a separate contract from the utility contract, a contract that made us very competitive in the marketplace that we could succeed. And that was back in 1999. At that time also, we negotiated with the union because of my expertise with the union and management to cherry pick the people we wanted on the team so we'd be successful. And that was in all 3 areas. So we actually did negotiate a contract with different work rules, different benefit package, the whole 10 yards. In fact, it's been very successful. It's about 12 years now that, we have stayed separate and it's standalone, making money. In those time frames, I can remember back in 2008, it was really, really tough with the economy and the stock market and stuff like that. And of course, we had to make a budget. So there's different ways of making a budget. You can either, in the HVAC field, you can increase revenues or cut costs. We try increasing revenues. I went out, looked for work myself, found work outside of the UGI footprint down to Philadelphia, won a big $3 million project down there, went to Florida. We did not win the project down there, but we went to Philadelphia. I actually went down to Philadelphia and ran that project, interaction between union and non-union people, the city of Philadelphia, and the Philadelphia airport. At the same time, I still ran the Lehigh Valley HVAC team. And then from there, came back. Once again, the budget wasn't there. The tough decisions we had to make was the first time in the history of layoffs. We also stopped the 401k match. Management also took pay cuts for 2 years. And with all that, we exceeded our budget and, kept people employed. Even though they were laid off, they were brought back. And that was the beginning of something that was unique throughout UGI. We had layoffs, like I said, stopped the 401k match and pay cuts. Right now, I know since I retired, everybody's back to full pay and moving on down the road. But it was things that we had to do for the business to survive. We had sure, there was problems, but there was no major problems with the unions. They truly, as long as you communicate with them and you're open with them, they saw it. They didn't like it, but it was fine. With that, too, we got into weatherization. When the president decided to have money for weatherization, we found new skills for our employees to keep them employed. And then also, I was sent to other areas of UGI to straighten some things out that went astray. So I have a lot of experience on both sides. Not everything's black and white. There's a lot of gray areas, but I found out if you can build a team and you can communicate clearly your expectations and what you want, it goes a long way. So that's my experience that I have had. And
Part two then.
Go ahead.
Talk about your community involvement and youth involvement.
Okay, I was involved a lot in the youth, especially in the Palmer Township area. I was a soccer coach for my kids. Got involved a little bit in baseball, not too much, but mostly soccer. And that was, I'm trying to think, my kids were probably 12 years old when I stopped that. I actually got a job in the management. When I took the job with customers, HVAC services, that job was 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. There was no time. The only thing I really regret in that job is missing some of my family, watching my kids grow up, because when I look back now, they're 30 years old, 27. But it was a thing I had to do in order to provide, my dedication to my employees and to my management team, and to make sure my family was taken care of.
Okay. And part three, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay. What experience in the community do you have that would lend you to knowing what the community would expect out of public education?
Could you ask that question again, please?
Yes, sir.
Just
What experience in the community do you have that would lend you to knowing what the community would expect out of public education?
I don't know if I have much experience, but I listen a lot to people. I know myself that education is very important. I mean, I know going through the interviewing process at UGI, trying to find entry-level positions, whether they're VOTEC or whatever, you need a strong educational background. the children, the kids, the students, they really need to be pushed. I mean, I look at saying, and I looked at a lot of young individuals looking for jobs. A little disappointed. Not so much, I'm not picking on Easton because I was in Bethlehem Township. I saw an array of kids. In fact, we had one of my supervisors involved with the VOTEC here, with the HVAC team. Matt Lomer used to go down and give the final tests for the VOTEC students down here with Kevin Pooley. I don't know, he was down there. Education is very important. I mean, so I have to say, I don't know, but you have to set policies and procedures and keep them in place. And always remember, it's the education that's going to make this community stronger, and then the state, and then the government.
Thank you, sir. Again, another three-part question.
Sure.
What kind of experience have you had with working with budgets? Do you have any recommendations to alleviate our current financial crisis? And lastly, recently we had to make some very difficult decisions. How do you handle making difficult decisions?
Working with budgets, yes. One of the things that my experience with the UGI HVAC side of the business, we had a budget to make. We always thought it was an unfair budget, but it was a budget that we had to meet, along as your P&L statement, all your expenses, your tools, your telephones, your car, your gas, uniforms, clerical paper, supplies, all that we were responsible for. And those were expenses. Then we had to bring in revenue and find out what gross margins were. Do a markup on the equipment, do a markup on the labor, downtime. We did all kinds of things with the budget that we had to do. And we would look at it weekly and then bi-weekly and then out a month when it came out. If we were behind budget, below budget, what could we do to do that? We talked to the sales team to try and increase sales, discount, multiple, whatever we had to do to put the dollars to the bottom line, because if not, in our type of business, you may survive and you may not survive. And your second part of the question?
Do you have any recommendations to alleviate our current financial crisis?
Well, first I have to sit here and say, I hear a lot. I don't know about your financial crisis. I mean, I read a lot in the papers, you're going to have layoffs, teachers. But I look at that as whisper down the alley. What you read in the newspaper, what you hear sitting down at a coffee shop may only be secondhand. I'd have to sit down and take a look at it and really dwell into it to see where it goes. But I know with my position there, I always looked at my manpower level. I looked at management. We looked at supervision. And you do what you have to do. You have to, I've laid off supervision, laid off clerical people, laid off union workers, took a pay cut myself, whatever we have to do to survive for the future for the vision. I'm not, with my position there, I wasn't looking to survive Monday. I was looking to survive 10 years down the road in order for that guy who gave him his job to come work for me, that he has a secure job. I did whatever it took. And that's where I say I worked 12 hours, 14 hours, Saturdays, Sundays, vacations. It didn't matter. It's people depended on me.
And the last part was about making difficult decisions, and how do you handle making those decisions?
First of all, I look at all the facts involved around it. I just don't just shoot from the hip. I look at all the avenues, get all the information I can, look at the pros and cons of it. I try not to get emotional about it. I try not to listen to people get emotional about it, because if you get emotional about it, sometimes your mind is fogged up. You have to look at the facts, and you have to do what's right for survival. You have to understand to fight another day, or, you know what, I have to make this tough decision and I have to move on because it's going to make the team stronger. And you know, so I hope that answered. I mean, I've made some very difficult decisions, and I'm not proud of it, but I had to do it. But when I look back, the company survived. People still had their jobs. You know, maybe in the short term they didn't, or whatever, but it was better off for it. We became a stronger individual as a company, as a team. I mean, I made some tough decisions. I let some people go that were by my side for 28 years. That, you know, if you don't cut the mustard, you know.
Okay, thank you.
What is your vision for education, and how does it support the economy and quality of life in this community?
How do I support education?
What is your vision for education,
Okay.
and how does it support the economy and quality of life in this community?
First of all, I think if you're more educated, whether it's VOTEC, whether it's college, or whether it's just liberal arts, everybody benefits from it. You can get better jobs from it. You're better educated. You can read. You have your math skills. I just very strongly feel that educators are important. You need to set policies and procedures, and you need to follow them. Not to say they can't change if the environment around it changes, but you need to set policy and procedures. You need to not only meet the guidelines that the state and the federal government put out there, you have to exceed the guidelines. You have to give something to motivate not just the students, but the teachers, the administrators, the school board. You got to get that team spirit for the schools to go on. I mean, I did quite a bit of research in the last 2 weeks or so. We need to bring the school level up. I realize, and maybe this isn't in place, but we're 480 out of 650 schools roughly. That's in the bottom third. But we spend, if the facts I get right, we're in the top 150 schools that spend more money on our students. You know, there's only 150 schools that spend more money than we do. And our ratio is 13-1, and the average to the state's 14-1 teachers ratios. We got a job to do. It's not an easy job. Not saying that nobody's not working hard, but we got to work harder. It's our future. I don't know, you know, because I sit and I can look at the kids interviewing. I know what I got. I need better, and I can't do it alone. It has to be done as a team. So you asked me, you know, one of the questions about what I want. I want something better for children and students out there to come out of this recession, out of this economy, looking for a job, knocking on the door, how to interview, get your foot in the door, and how to motivate yourself to move up. And the only way you're going to do that is the school. I mean, if I look back, there are certain teachers and people that affected my life and put me in the right direction. I didn't stumble and fall, but I picked myself up and I moved on. And that's what I think has to be done, you know, as far as the education. I think it's totally important. And it's not just here, it's lacking throughout the United States.
Thank you.
I'd like you to please state the top 3 objectives that you would like to see accomplished during your term of office if you're appointed to the board.
Well, I'd like to see us move from the last third to at least halfway up to the top 50% of the school, if not to the top third. That would be my first objective. Number 2, not that I would love a balanced budget, but we need one, and we need to do whatever it takes to balance the budget. I mean, all we got to do is look around us and see what's happening around this economy. Every day, look at the stock market the last couple of days. Look at it for the last 2-3 years. We need to make changes. So I would look for a balanced budget my first year in it. third, I really don't know. I'd have to jump in the fire 2 feet, walk around, ask a lot of questions, and get opinions of other ones in the room. But my first one would be, increase the education, take us from the lower third, at least bring us halfway up, if not to the top third, and balance the budget.
Thank you.
This may overlap a little bit.
Okay.
What do you believe are the most pressing items the district is facing at this time?
And when the district, I'll consider that community too. I think jobs. I think getting the community involved in the education and not just send their children to school and let somebody else worry about it. I think we have to get the community back behind us, backing us up to move forward. And getting our expenses under control.
Thank you.
You started to answer this one first, but
Okay.
I'll tell you about it. Can you dedicate the time and energy required to be on the school board? This is including attending monthly committee meetings, regular board meetings, special board meetings, events, executive sessions, and devoting preparation time that's involved in reviewing the materials made available prior to the meetings.
Absolutely. Yes to all those. I think you'll find out I'm a much dedicated person.
Thank you.
What is your vision or plan for Easton Area School District to compete with cyber or charter schools? In what ways would your plan help this district?
I can't answer that. I don't know enough about it. That would be an area that I would have to develop myself in, ask questions. I don't have an answer to that.
Thank you.
This is the last one of the prepared questions. What do you view as the top educational concern facing Pennsylvania school systems today? And the second part of it is, what is your vision to address this concern to achieve positive outcome? Do it again?
Yeah, would you please? I just want to make sure I answer it correctly.
What do you view as the top educational concern facing Pennsylvania school systems today?
All right. There's two things. One, we have to improve our education. We have to entice or motivate our teachers to do a much better job across the board in educating our students. Number two, we have to get the costs of that under control so that we can afford to do things and not have to make cuts and stuff as far as stuff for education, whether that be sports or whatever. Education has to come first. And the second part?
What is your vision to address the concern to achieve a positive outcome?
Well, if I'm appointed to the board, I would like to sit down with the board and discuss it. That has to be a team decision. I cannot do that myself. It has to be everyone in this room. It has to be the superintendent. It has to be the community. It has to be the teachers. If we're going to have a better school education program out there, curriculums, policies, or whatever, it has to be done as a team. One individual can push it, but it takes the team to accomplish it. And that's one of the things I would do, is try to get the team together on a common goal, stand behind everybody. Even though we may have our differences, I may not agree, but once that decision's made, we're one, and we move down the road as one, and we tackle the problem, and we increase the education.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the prepared questions. I'll ask if there's any board members with any follow-up or other questions at this point. Seeing none, Thank you. And we have one more candidate to go.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask questions?
And Larry, you're going to stick around.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt? Good evening. That's your seat. We're going to just take a few seconds here.
It's okay.
We've been sitting here for...
Feel free to stretch your legs.
Almost 3 hours, actually a little longer than that, between one chair to the other. So,
All right. I got to sit before I came in.
hey, ready to begin. Matt, we have a few questions prepared. Sure. And we're going to be alternating between myself and Mr. Ryder on asking them. And the first are a few legal questions up front. Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
No.
Are you a member of any boards?
No.
Do you hold any public office?
No.
And are you employed by the federal government?
No.
Okay, very good. Then we can move on. And by this time, the rest of the group here has these questions memorized as well as I do. Do you have any relatives working in the Easton Area School District, and if so, in what capacity?
I have a cousin, Richard Agretto, who works for the IU. I guess I'm not sure if that's an Easton Area School District position. I just figured I would get that out there. I didn't think so, but I know he does.
He's Bethel, though, right? He's Bethel.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's my Uncle Rick and there's my cousin.
Oh, okay.
So my Uncle Rick works for the Bethlehem Area School District.
Okay. Okay, and the other's the IU.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, question is, what motivates you, there's a bolded part here.
Okay.
What motivates you to become a board member, and why did you not run in the previous election?
I may have to write that down. Can I start with the second part first?
Sure.
And just to be honest with the board, I'm not going to try to sugarcoat anything. Why I didn't run in the fall was my wife. My wife has a belief that running on school board or being a school board member automatically targets our children. We have a hair salon she runs out of our house, all legal. One of her clients was, his wife was there one day, and we had talked about this 4 years ago. And the discussion came up, and he said right out that there is a good chance that your children will be targeted. And I'm not sure if any of the board members are married, but if you don't have your spouse's support, it makes it very difficult. So 4 years ago, that kind of went off the table. I did run for Congress. The campaign was an eye-opener to myself. My wife isn't into politics. That kind of softened how a run for school board would go. But again, at that point, when the elections were up in Palmer, she still wasn't on board with me running for, like I said, fear of anything going after the kids. And again, because I had a school board member tell me that might happen, I can't really argue that fact at home. So what possessed me to run now is time's gone on. I know a couple of board members. I know a couple of people who have run for school board, and those fears have kind of gone away, with the exception of one person that has talked to her. Nobody feels that their children are targeted. Our kids are older. I've gone to a couple of the open houses with the parents, with the teachers, I'm sorry. And nothing's really come up to say that my involvement in the board would be held against my children. And again, that was my main concern back then. It's not now.
The last part of this is, will you be interested in running for this position when the appointment ends? And to fill you in, earlier this evening, the board had voted to change it from the appointment, at the end of the appointment, instead of being a 2-year office, it would then go to a 4-year office. So starting December of 2013, it would be a 4-year term.
I don't think I know enough about the position to answer that accurately now. I think, again, just being honest, if I wanted to give a canned answer, it would be obvious, yes, I'll run again in 2013. I don't know what the position holds. I currently commute. I'm gone from my house 12 hours a day. If the position seems to be too much, it might not be favorable to me or the board for me to run again. I might not be able to devote as much time as possible. So I can't accurately answer that question right now. I would like to, but like I said, I don't know everything that the board entails.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Matt, 3-part. I'll go slow with this. Provide us with some of your background that you believe would be helpful while serving on the board. That's part 1.
Okay.
And part 2 would be talk about your community involvement and youth involvement or anything else community. And part 3, what experience in the community do you have that would lend you to knowing what the community would expect out of public education?
Okay. First question, my background. I guess what makes me most qualified is I'm a taxpayer and I'm a parent. I have 2 children. Knock on wood, everything goes well. My older's going into 7th grade, my younger's going into 4th grade. That's my main priority. Like I said in my letter of intent, I am from Phillipsburg. I'll always have a part of me that
that roots for Phillipsburg. There's always going to be the part of me at Thanksgiving that argues with my relatives. But it is tough. It's difficult as a Phillipsburg person to come across the river, and this is nothing what we expect. I've been here since 2003. I love the facilities. When I ran track, your track was always the tops. And that's not knocking Phillipsburg. That's just a different direction where the money is spent. What does concern me is, again, as a taxpayer, I look at my tax rate keeps going up. Since I first moved here, I've looked at the budgets. I've looked where some of the money's being spent. And I think it could be better handled. I think that's part of the board's job. The key to the budget cuts isn't necessarily going after positions. And I understand, these are all in a tough spot. I'm not saying you're not. That's why I want to run to maybe help out. But I think there's other ways to look at it. But I want my kids to graduate from Easton High School. I want there to be plenty of teachers. I want there to be quality education when it gets to that time where they are in high school, and what amenities there are for them. Both my daughters are in choir. I've gone to both their choir concerts in the last 2 weeks. It's tough for me to sit there as a parent and think could be one of the programs that are cut. This is what kids do. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, I did it when I was a kid. My parents came and watched me sing, and I'm doing it for my kids. My parents come down from Stroudsburg, and they watch them sing. Things like that shouldn't be cut. My community involvement. I currently coach soccer. I have been for the last couple of years for Palmer. I coached U12. I was a head coach. U10, I was an assistant coach. Right now, I'm coaching U12. It's a co-ed team for the spring. And I'm slated to be the U12 coach, head coach in the fall, as well as a U14 assistant coach. I'm also a member of the Lehigh Valley Tea Party. I was once the chair. I'm currently an inactive member, but I still participate, still talk with some of the folks. And that was a good 3 years worth of involvement there. And my experience, I would just go back to that I'm a taxpayer. I have a household budget that, again, you have your bills coming in, you have your money coming in, you try to do the best with what you have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You started touching on one item there, and that's where the next question comes from. What kind of experience have you had with working with budgets? Again, 3 parts here. Do you have any recommendations to alleviate our current financial crisis? And lastly, recently we had to make some very difficult decisions. How do you handle making difficult decisions?
My experience with budgets goes with when I was a member of the Lehigh Valley Tea Party. We did incorporate, and again, my household budget. My parents do have a cleaning business. I do help them out. It's a small business, so it's, again, money coming in, money going out. How do you save? Because my parents are older. How do you put money away and not distract from the business? Every now and then you need a new work van. Is it worth it to fix the old one or to go out and buy a new one? Minor things like that. And just compared to the board's budget, that is small scale, but it all comes down to money coming in, money going out. My ideas for the budget, again, without knowing the current scale of what's going on, I don't know where the majority of the money is being spent. I could guess, I could speculate, but I could be wrong, and that would be bad for me. I know since I've moved here, I would say from 2004 to roughly 2000, I've been getting copies of the budget, looking where some of the money is being spent. I guess my biggest concern, what I know for a fact, is some of the construction costs. What makes my head hurt, to be honest, is when projects aren't done and are coming before the board for final approval, or when projects aren't done correctly and we're paying contractors for shoddy work. That wouldn't be acceptable in any of our houses, and yet it's being done. I know when we first put the artificial turf in, part of the track was ripped up. To me, the contractors ripped it up. If they didn't know that they were going to be tearing up that track when they put the turf down, that's their fault. But the Easton taxpayers paid to resurface the track that was tore up. And I just don't agree with that. That wouldn't happen in somebody's household. It shouldn't be happening here. I'm sure there's other examples. I'm sorry, they just escaped me.
And what about difficult decisions?
Difficult decisions, I feel as long as you're honest with people, as long as you come off calm, then I'll go up for my upbringing. My dad has, well, he's older now, not as bad as it was. My dad had a flash temper. My dad would yell and scream, and he could be 100% right. But when he started yelling, he lost the argument because nobody wants to listen. And I feel once you spill over into the arguments, the yelling, the name calling, the finger pointing, your point's lost. You're better off just being open, honest. Here it is. I mean, the situation facing the Easton School District is fact. You can look at the dollars and the cents. We're in a tight crunch. And the issues are, do we look at personnel, do we look at construction, or do we look at taxing the people more? Just be honest with people. If you're gonna increase my taxes, tell me why. If you have to, your back's against the wall, you're going to vote for the 2.2% increase. Explain why. What's going to be different when I come to the next board meeting next year and the same situation is facing the school board? Am I looking at another increase, or what's being done from now until then to alleviate that conversation? You know, I understand. There might be certain things to say now to the taxpayers, we need to increase your taxes, and we're sorry about it. But between now and then, we're going to go through, I believe it was Miss Ellison who said it, we're going to go through line by line, a line item budget. Where can we cut? I believe it was the athletic board had did it. They needed to come up with 75,000, and they came up with 76, I believe. So I'm just going from memory, but things like that.
Okay, thank you.
What is your vision for education, and how does it support the economy and quality of life in this community?
I guess the easiest answer would be all the children that want to come to Easton School District, that want to be educated, will be educated. They will have every opportunity that's there for them to learn your basics, your math, writing, your arithmetic, as well as the extracurriculars. I think your extracurricular activities are just as important to well-rounded student as your math, your reading, your social studies, and that's something that should be there for them. If a student comes from a financially strapped household, that shouldn't prevent them from playing sports. I believe children that play sports, and I'll go back to when I was in high school. We played sports, we did fundraisers. If we needed new uniforms, we did fundraisers. We didn't come back to the school district. We did fundraisers. I see that I know the baseball team is always out there doing stuff. I know there's other sporting events that are always doing stuff. But I think you need to make those opportunities for everybody. You can't say it's going to cost X amount of dollars to play this sport, or we can't have this sport because we don't have the money. We need to find a way to balance that and cut from other areas where the waste. My vision for education, if you plan on graduating here, you have to put your time in. I don't believe in just pushing kids through the system. We should have quality teachers. I believe in peer reviews for teachers. And I'll go back to when I was in school. You knew who the good teachers were, you knew who the bad teachers were. I don't remember bad teachers being around long. And that's the problem. You could have two teachers teaching one subject, one's great, one's bad. You have to kind of level that playing field, because it's not fair to a student who gets stuck in that bad classroom that he's not getting the same education his parents are paying for as somebody else in that good classroom.
Matt, I'm going to ask you to state the top 3 objectives that you would like to see accomplished during your term of office if you're appointed to this board.
I guess my top objective is just to get the budget straightened out. I don't really know if I have a next 2. I think the biggest problem facing the board and the district is the budget issue. Once that's solved, then we can go forward from there. But I think that's the biggest hamstring right now is the budget. We just approved the one, and you're already looking at next year. I would hope, if I'm a member of the board next year, there's no talk of cutting positions. And I guess I would tie in, I guess if I could make it an objective, would be teachers, students per teacher. Keep it down, keep it manageable. Keep the students happy, keep the parents happy, keep the teachers happy.
Thank you.
This may overlap. What do you believe are the most pressing items the district is facing at this time?
Well, that's the gorilla in the room. I would probably say our contracts. Based on my knowledge from outside the meetings and being at the school board meetings, the last one where Mr. Myers spoke, it's no secret that there's an unsustainable contract that's currently in effect.
Thank you.
Here's the big question for you. Sort of refers back to some of your comments from number 1. Can you dedicate the time and energy required to be on the school board? This includes attending monthly committee meetings, regular board meetings, special board meetings and events, executive sessions, and devoting preparation time involved in reviewing the materials that are made available prior to the meetings.
I guess the easiest answer and the most truthful is yes, and which goes back to why I can't commit to running again at the next term. If I'm selected to be on the board, that's the commitment that I make. You have me from when you vote, I guess it's tonight, to December of 2013. That's the commitment. My wife's aware of it. She's on board with it. I'm aware of it. I guess it's easy to say. How can I back it up? I just recently completed the P90X program. And I say that because it's not so much the workout, but to dedicate yourself for 90 days straight for close to 2 hours a night in your basement is very difficult. And I'm convinced that if I can do that program, I can do the board. Just being honest, it's just, you put your mind to do something, and that's where you go.
Thank you.
What is your vision or plan for Easton Area School District to compete with cyber or charter schools? In what ways would your plan help this district?
I haven't given that, to be honest, I haven't given that any thought.
And the last prepared question. What do you view as the top educational concern facing Pennsylvania school systems today? And the second part of that, what is your vision to address this concern to achieve a positive outcome?
This goes back to my arguments with my wife. The PSSA. To me, we are teaching our students to take a test. And that is a huge injustice to our kids. Having gone to the parent nights and speaking with the teachers, it's a learning experience to see what shackles them from truly educating our kids. I know math. I have a math mind. I've always had it. Math has always come easy to me. English, by my SAT scores, English was something that was always difficult till later in life. But I had vocabulary up through my senior year in high school. My kids are 12 and soon to be 9, and they do not have vocabulary lessons. And it drives me crazy. And when I go into the parent-teacher nights when school first opens up, and I see in, especially my older daughter, there's words on the board that the teacher comes right out and says, these are the words that we're going to be learning because this is on the PSSA. I appreciate her honesty, but there's other words that are going to be more important to our students than just the words that the state deems are important. I don't think it's right that our funding, our grants is based on our PSSA scores. You want to educate the children. You educate them for a future where they can go out and they can think for themselves. When you educate them on how to take a test, you're failing them. And that's what I think is really killing the district. And that's just from my own personal opinion. That's from talking to different teachers and a few administrators. Nobody seems to be happy about it, but it seems to be what we're straddled with. If there's one thing that I could rail against besides the budget, it would be the teaching to a test.
Thank you. And at this point, I'll ask, do the board members have any other follow-up questions or other questions? Hearing none, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to say thank you to all the candidates that are here tonight. Yes, it's been a long night and everything, but this is rather important when filling the position. And so on that, we will be moving ahead. I must ask at this point if there's any public comment on the process. Again, no questions to the candidates, only on the process.
Okay, good evening, Jay Jackson.
Need your name and address and then sign the paper, please.
Name, Jay Jackson, address 1202 Sycamore Avenue, Easton, Pennsylvania. First, I want to thank the board for convening, which is good community stewardship. I'm here on behalf of the NAACP, and we'd like to give our acknowledgement to Baron Vandenberg and his qualifications. Point number 3, as a resident of Easton for 10 years, I think one of the big shortcomings in the school district is a systemic nepotism problem. From, you name it, from high to low. It's everywhere. That is a big problem within Easton that needs to be fixed. Which, when you fix that, you'll create some balance in some of the decision-making within the school district. And I don't think that's been addressed. I was here on another issue last year, but I won't bring that up. Secondly, I think it's important to have the school board have some diversity. The gentleman here did talk about diversity. You know, this is America, and the school board needs to be diverse. I think another lady talked about, she used the term diversity, but it was really geographically, are we balanced in the school board? I think is what her point was. So I think it's important that we have some diversity in the school board. And I think that's pretty much it on behalf of the NAACP, and I think hopefully look forward to the right decision. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Lord. My name is Ken Brown, and I do not envy the board's decision. This evening, you have some great candidates out there. Richard Siegfried, who I've served on the board with, and I echo what Mr. Borghino say. He does his homework, and he does his homework well. But tonight, I'm going to be speaking in reference to Baron, who I believe that I was one of his mentors. Baron has a zeal for what he believes in, and I've seen this young man progress. I remember the first time I met him, he sat in my office, and we talked about what is he looking for in the future? What did you want to do? One of the things I kept saying to him was, look to give back. If you give back, it comes back. And here's a young man that was very active in his school and had a mission for the future for himself. And what better way to come back and give up himself after 4 years? Baron is a type of person that is looking to help all the time. As you heard him say earlier on, he's still helping youth within our community and in our school district, and that's what community needs to tie in at. Too many times people don't realize that we can't do it all. We do need a community to enhance what we're trying to do. School board is more than just a meeting. It's more than just brick and mortar and educating. It's about all those saving life skills, and it's been alluded to so many times this evening that diversity on the board. Well, we do have some diversity on the board. We have senior board members. We have new board members. We have Frank, who's young. And then we have Baron, who's trying to get on the board. And I think it speaks to where this board, this new board, is coming from. And that is to engage and open their hands and arms open for younger persons who come along and understand the complexity of being involved. Again, I want to say I don't in any way want to be sitting where you're sitting right now. You have some absolute qualified candidates that I've heard tonight. And again, I wish you well in your endeavor. And I want to say wholeheartedly that we need to have someone of Barron's capability and young, because if we're going to continue to be a board throughout the city of Easton, the Palmer, the Forest, the Easton, the South Side, we need to have young people understanding what better way to teach another person coming up than to have a diverse board where all different walks of life and all different age categories are working together for the benefit of the student that we're trying to serve. I thank you for the opportunity to come before you this evening to speak. I will leave you with this. Good luck.
Good evening, Honorable Board. My name is James Vandenberg. That name may sound a little familiar to you because you just interviewed Vandenberg this evening. Well, I'm his dad, and I stand before you, and one might say, well, you're his dad, so how can we expect you to be objective? You love the kid, you brought him here. I don't think objective is what I'm looking for this evening. I think what I want to say to you is more what is true and what is from the heart and what is known about this young man. I watched him as a little kid. I watched him start out in school, and I watched all the accolades, and I watched every one of his teachers from kindergarten through elementary school. He's going to be someone, Mr. Vandenberg. There is something in this young man that is going to excel him, is going to push him forward, and is going to cause him to do things like no others. We believe that. We believed it then, and we believe it now. One of the things that Barron has been privy to, and I think exceptional in this definition, is having gone through schools that are diverse in nature. Here is a young man who has always been in the midst of diversity. Now, everyone has come before me and everyone has said, you need someone with diversity. We need more diversity. It is true. It is absolutely true that you have to represent